So update 4.0 for Battlefield 2042 is coming out tomorrow, April 19th, which is obviously later than initially anticipated, but I digress. We're going to go through the list of changes and fixes and improvements today. I'm telling you right now, I'm not going through the entirety of it because one, I'm a little bit under the weather and my voice isn't all that great. And number two, this video would be literally 2 hours long and there's a lot of these things that you probably don't even care about. So I'm going to highlight the ones that I think are the most important, and there'll be a link in the description down below if you want to go and read the entirety of the patch notes for yourselves. I'm telling you, there is a lot here, and I gotta say, it was about time because shit was looking pretty grim for Battlefield 2042, and albeit it still kind of is, having such a massive patch that hopefully won't break too many things is a great step in the right direction. So, first thing I want to mention is the next update following this one is presently scheduled to release in May. So they didn't say early May, they just said May, and they said it's focused on bringing further quality of life updates and bug fixes, so no news or date for the release of Season 1 yet. Hopefully we get some info on that soon. So moving on to the patch notes. So VoIP, finally getting VoIP in Battlefield 2042. So there are going to be 2 voice chat channels to choose between party and squad, and settings for VoIP can be adjusted via options, sound, voice, chat while in game. The scoreboard, so in update 3.3 they released the UI refresh for the scoreboard. Following this update, this UI refresh will now also be available during the end of round screens, in which instance you'd want to see the scoreboard most, so now you can actually see the scoreboard when the round ends. There are a ton of weapon attachment changes, so with update 4.0, we've overhauled the behavior of many weapon attachments to ensure that their impact when customizing your weapons is unique and noticeable. So previously some attachments had effects that were too similar from others. They were pretty much exactly the same as others. Half the attachments were just copies and different skins of another attachment, so there wasn't a whole lot of variety. So they say it was unclear what the impact on your weapons would be when switching between them. We encourage you to experiment with the refreshed weapon attachments to see how they feel after the update, and you'll be able to read the full set of changes further down the page. So for general, they made several improvements to kill assists, so damage assists trigger from a lower damage threshold, improving consistency and clarity. EMP grenades now trigger assists more reliably, and assists can now trigger when a teammate kills an enemy and either of them were covered in smoke you deployed. They also fixed EMP effects persisting on screen, fixed the bug where equipping a weapon attachment from the item reveal menu would in some scenarios reset the full customization on that weapon back to defaults, which I could see could get really annoying. Fixed the bug where the player's saved customization would sometimes be reset to defaults after joining a server. I saw a lot of people complaining about this, so that's a good fix. Simplified keybinds for chat and VoIP, which is great, I guess. They also switch weapon for gunner can now be properly bound in key bindings, which is shocking that it wasn't at the beginning. And hopefully they also made it so you can switch the keybind to swap between sights for those that have multiple optics, but I guess we'll see a little bit later down. So for matchmaking and social, they fixed a bug where a user encounters a matchmaking loop and gets sent back to the lobby, which I've seen and experienced a lot of. As for progression and unlocks, they did a bunch of XP adjusting for support actions. So projectile destroyed with Irish's APS 36. So the shootdown sentinel was increased to 10 XP from 5. Enemy disrupted with EMP from 10 to 20 XP. Equipment destroyed from 5 to 10 XP. Healing from 5 to 20 XP. Resupply repairing also from 5 to 20 XP. Ranger destroyed from 25 to 75 XP. Objective neutralized from 250 XP down to 200 XP. Objective captured down from 375 XP to 200 XP. Sector objective defended from 15 XP to 10 XP. And also repairing a ranger now correctly triggers the repairing XP event. I personally didn't even know you could repair rangers because I really don't use them all that much, but that's great for people that do repair the rangers. So there are a bunch of map fixes, not changes, fixes. So going through the most important ones, for Hourglass, they fixed the bug where players were still receiving damage from the tornado while inside the stadium. For Kaleidoscope, sprinklers are now active for 9 instead of 20 seconds. The sprinklers no longer deal damage. Sprinklers should no longer affect players outside the building. The freeze effect in the HUD is less intense. I personally think that was one of the most important changes to the maps. That effect was so freaking bad. I didn't mind the damage so much, but the freezing HUD, damn, you could barely see what the hell you were looking at when that happened. But I digress, moving on. So they made some changes to Battlefield Portal, several improvements to the Portal browser. So name/description is now autofilled when creating an experience. Name/description fields of preset experiences are now empty by default. Browsing experiences remembers your previous search query, which is great, and resolved instances where the browse tabs didn't function correctly when applying custom filters, among many other changes to Battlefield Portal specifically. So for the audio changes here, I just want to mention a few. So they adjusted wingsuit audio for Sundance so they are easier to hear for enemies, and they also improved the audio for the M5C Bolt, eBay AA Wildcat, and MD540 Nightbird when they pass by players. So moving on to game mode changes. So for Breakthrough, they fixed air vehicles being able to spawn at the opponent's HQ in start of the round, which was one of the most ridiculous things that was there for the longest time. And yeah, it is finally fixed, so that is great. No longer will you have people crashing their jets into the entire enemy team and killing like 20 people in one go. For Rush, they fixed issues with Rush declaring the winning team prematurely and or incorrectly, and deploying gadgets over Rush MCOMs should no longer prevent arming. Conquest, they adjusted spawn locations to prevent spawning out of bounds. There were also some changes made to Hazard Zone. Actually, it's the game that got the most changes, but I'm not even going to mention them because Hazard Zone is so painfully irrelevant at this point that it doesn't even seem like it's worth it. So moving on to soldier fixes. So they fixed some issues where the player would be impossible to hit when entering an exposed vehicle seat. They fixed further instances of not being able to revive players when some of their body parts were clipping with assets/geometry. Hopefully this time it'll be fixed for good and we won't be seeing this issue again because that is really freaking annoying. They fixed players not being able to place deployables in certain areas. They fixed an issue where the player would not be able to jump or vault after reviving somebody, except when you would like crouch jump. You could do that. I have this issue happen all the time. Because I play Falco a lot, so I would revive a lot of people, and having this bug, man, it was so freaking annoying. So hopefully it is actually fixed. And just a couple more here. They improved traversal across moving objects, and they updated animations for directional volts. So a couple of changes to animations. Players should no longer experience looping revive animations when down. So I think that's the one that looks like the person is constantly like just proning and then getting back up and proning and getting back up, so they look like they're still alive. So you would shoot them, but they were actually downed. So that's great. They made the revive animations smoother. So they made quite a few changes to specialists, and I'm just going to mention a few here. So for Irish, they made all vehicle types able to smash through his deployable cover, which is great. They made quite a few changes to Dozer's ballistic shield. So he now becomes vulnerable for a short time when the shield is hit by heavy fire, such as from a tank. And they also fixed a bunch of glitches and bugs that you could do with Dozer's shield, but it's nice that you're now going to be able to actually harm a Dozer with a tank shell, because those tank shells are massive and shouldn't be stopped by such a small shield. So at least now he will be vulnerable following a hit from a tank shell. So they made a couple of fixes or changes to Rao to make him a little bit more powerful. So his cyber warfare suite should now feel more responsive. They resolved bugs related to using the cyber warfare suite ability without an active target. Once the cyber warfare suite ability finishes, your target is now reset. And they replaced the Trojan network with the threat perception trait. So when Rao takes damage from enemy fire, he will automatically spot the enemy for himself. They also made a change to Pike. So replaced threat perception with the eagle-eyed trait, so players damaged by Pike are now spotted for everyone, and they also updated Pike's mastery criteria to align with her new trait. So for Casper, the recon drone can now descend with crouch toggle buttons. The rotors on the recon drone are now placed correctly. The spotting sound now plays correctly while using the recon drone. The recon drone now remembers its direction upon re-entry. So for Sundance, they fixed her anti-armor grenades that locked onto targets which were too far away. So they now filter by angle and distance in a more accurate way and have the same priority for air/ground vehicles. The anti-armor grenades no longer swap targets when already tracking a target and have reduced maximum range once unfolded and in flight. They also have different tracking radiuses for ground and air vehicles. They no longer target Irish's deployable cover or his shoot-down sentry. They now track properly if left sleeping on the ground now instead of simply exploding. They improved the speed when switching through Sundance's grenade belt. Scatter grenade detonation timings adjusted to let them explode quicker. Landing on rough terrain no longer causes Sundance to bounce up in the air, and fixed a rare issue where Sundance's body could become detached from a vehicle upon entry while landing onto the vehicle from the wingsuit. causing Sundance to become invisible. There's a pretty big amount of HUD/UI fixes. Some of the most important ones are HUD customization. Most notably, they added new options that allow players to scale the transparency of many different icons in the HUD: friendly icons, squad member icons, enemy icons, revive icons, objective icons, and ping marker icons. Each icon type can have different transparency when zoomed or not zoomed. This option can be found under display HUD icons. So this is an option we've had for the past 3 Battlefield titles. I think they were added in Battlefield 4, and they were such a big quality of life update to reduce the amount of clutter on the map when aiming down sight. And not having them in Battlefield 2042, which how much stuff is happening, was really detrimental. So I guess good job on adding something that was in the past games, but it is really, really nice to have, and I have been complaining about this since the launch of Battlefield 2042, and even in the beta. I was like, where's all the HUD customization gone? Why do we not have it anymore? We're literally regressing from past titles. And they also added 24 new options to control the opacity and size of HUD icons. Moving on to gadget changes, so just highlighting a few here. So the recoilless M5 will now one-shot a ranger if it's a direct hit. They also made it easier to place the insertion beacon, which was really a pain in the ass. They also adjusted it so that you now spawn in the same direction where the insertion beacon is facing when spawning on it, which is great. As for weapon attachments, there is a lot. So most of the weapon attachments have been tweaked in some shape or form, and there are even more changes on top of the tweaks. So one most notable one was the underbarrel activations, such as flashlights and laser sights will no longer be reset after being revived. So let's say you had the laser sight or flashlight off, you got killed, you got revived, it would turn on again. Well, that's not going to happen anymore. It's just going to stay off. So as for weapons, again, a lot of changes here. One that made me laugh is located a missing R in the description of the PKP BP. I can just imagine them like searching through boxes and shit to find the missing R in the description. But I digress. They increased the PKP BP base recoil, and while searching for the missing R in PKP's description, they also located the missing bullet for the M44. So that was a 2-for-1 right there. So good on them. And another one of the more important ones in my opinion, they fixed an issue which caused some players to be unable to shoot or ADS after exiting a vehicle, and this, from my knowledge, was caused by having an underbarrel launcher on your weapon, which made the SFAR completely unusable if you were getting in and out of vehicles frequently, because it would just make it so that, one, you couldn't ADS or use the plus system. So hopefully it's fixed for good this time, because that was incredibly annoying. The SFAR, one of my favorite guns to use, or favorite assault rifles, and having it have this bug just made it completely unusable. So hopefully it's actually fixed for real this time. They did a bunch of fixes to the actual melee animations, so animation fixes related to melee takedowns and a bunch of other fixes, because melee, let's face it, was really freaking jank. Like, it was really a roll of the dice whether or not something would break or you'd actually even melee the person. So quite a few fixes there. As for vehicles, so they're adjusting the number of active vehicles across maps and modes. So the first iteration of this change is in this update. So as an example, for Breakthrough 64 on Kaleidoscope, Sector 1 has seen its number of vehicles reduced from 17 to 13, Sector 2 from 18 to 17, and Sector 3 from 19 to 17. So going down the list of changes to vehicles, so for the Bolt, players are now able to shoot passengers within an M5C Bolt more easily. So those are pretty much the changes I wanted to highlight in Update 4.0. I thought the changes for the Nightbird and the Bolt were being implemented in this update here, but I guess they aren't. So they were supposed to be changing classes. So the Bolt was supposed to be moved into armor, and the Nightbird was supposed to be moved into attack air vehicles, but I guess it isn't happening. It'll happen in the next update, or they're going to see how the current changes affect the gameplay. But yeah, those are the changes I wanted to highlight. Again, link in the description down below if you want to go and read the entirety of the patch notes. They are quite substantial, and such a massive patch hopefully doesn't break too many things and actually fixes long-standing bugs that we've had in the game that are really frustrating for the longest time. It's unfortunate that there are no mentions of input fixes, so mouse input and controller input, because mouse input feels really, really bad in Battlefield 2042 compared to other first-person shooters. So kind of disappointed in not seeing that, and I think it's one of the most important things they should be looking at, because having a first-person shooter in which your input doesn't work properly kind of defeats the point of, you know, playing a first-person shooter. But anyways, this is a step in the right direction. Again, most of these changes should have been done before launch. Like, a lot of this stuff we had in past games, and we're now just getting now, like 5.5 months after launch. So yeah, there is definitely a lot they can do better for future titles, and but it's great to see that it's such a substantial update, not just a couple of changes here and there. So next update in May, and hopefully we get some news on when Season 1 will be launching sooner rather than later. But anyways, this video has gone on for long enough, so hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and as always, thank you very much for watching, I really appreciate it, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good one.